Now, to be honest, I really wasn't expecting much from the Miami Grand Prix this year. A Max Verstappen domination, a couple of Ferraris on the podium, maybe Sauber taking 20 minutes to do a pit stop, you know, the usual sort of stuff. But how wrong I was. The Grand Prix was actually a good one, easily the best race we've seen at the Miami circuit so far. So let's get into it. Here are the key takeaways from the Miami Grand Prix. And I'm sorry it's been such a long time since the last video, but sometimes life happens, but I'm glad to say we're back. So first things first, the guy who finished first, Lando Norris. For those of us in Europe who stayed up well past our bedtime to see the Miami Grand Prix, what a treat it was to finally see him clinch his maiden victory after I think it's nearly 110 attempts. Now I have to say I was wondering what the scenery would have looked like at McLaren should Piastri have won before Norris, but honestly fair play to Lando and full speed ahead now that that monkey is off his back. And also it looks like he's matured a lot too. The days of him asking to be left alone on the team radio are over, as it sounded like there was more of a constant communication between himself and the pit wall right through until the checkered flag. After all, if you've got that absolute shed load of data and information at your disposal, why not use it? But also for the sake of his own sanity as well, he had to win that race when he found himself in first position. Given everything that went on in the past, he had to clinch this win just for the sake of his own sanity as a Formula 1 driver. And you know what? Thank God he did, because now we have a Lando Norris who is rejuvenated and confident and has that weight off his shoulders combined with a very tidy and nippy McLaren. And that is a very formidable combination. And also, not to mention, consistent, because McLaren have finally remembered how to start a season well, and let's just hope that they keep this rolling. And this whole combination of positives that McLaren are showing right now, I think might have teams like Ferrari little bit concerned, especially when you consider how much of the season there actually is left to run still. And that brings us then on to Ferrari. And it's amazing actually how the Constructors' Championship doesn't tell the full story as to what's happening right now, and given their current form, you would expect one of the Ferraris, Sainz or Leclerc perhaps, to be right up there with Max's position if he does have a problem. And that should have been the case, but thanks to Checo's dive bomb on the first corner, a couple of safety cars, Ferrari were unfortunately left to play catch up for most of the race. And here we are once again where Ferrari, they talk the talk, they roll out their special livery and there's all this hoo-ha about them, but when it comes to the crunch and where they're actually supposed to take the full advantage, they couldn't. I mean, okay, sure, Leclerc scored a decent third place and Sainz was lamenting a lost win due to pit stop timing and safety cars and things like this. But over the course of the season, they have to make sure that they keep McLaren at bay and also try and stay as close to Red Bull as possible. Because if they keep squandering opportunities like they had at Miami, they are going to very quickly find McLaren stepping on their heels. And also that special livery, the one with the blue and the HP sponsorship, nah, I'm sorry, that wasn't really that great. In fact, I'd like to discuss the topic of one-off special liveries in a future video at one stage, because the whole build-up to that thing was just such a ugh. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. Now, I hate to break up the party and bring everything crashing back to reality, but so far in 2024, Sainz and Norris's wins have only come when Verstappen's car has been compromised. Like in Australia when his brakes decided that they'd had enough, and here in Miami when the floor of his car suffered damage due to a pesky bollard that he had to kind of shift out of the way. And actually his response to that in that press interview was pretty damn hilarious. And so from all this, I guess I'm kind of saying that we are not yet in a position still where Max can fight absolute tooth and nail with a car that's 100% and still not win. And we're still faced with the likelihood that if you want to see drivers like Checo or Sainz or Leclerc or Norris win a race, you're gonna have to pretty much expect Max to have a problem with his car. But it got me thinking, because of the Verstappen domination and also the Hamilton domination that preceded it, are we now seeing kind of a backlog of driver success? Drivers who should have notched up wins or maybe into double figures by this point, but kind of haven't because, you know, first and second place are pretty much locked out by one or two other drivers. It'd be interesting to do a video on this soon, but yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And then amazingly, Alpine actually got their season up and running with a 10th place and scoring their first point of the season with Ocon having a very respectable race. However, this could have been over before it started due to some insanely close wheel-to-wheel action with Gasly on the first lap. So this just shows, I think, although that they are now off and running in the points department, the drivers are still not willing to give an inch to each other, even if it means scoring minor points or even being really far back down the field. But it puts Alpine into a really dangerous position because points are so few and far between. Had they actually collided, it would have allowed teams lower down the order, such as Williams and Sauber, to pick up the pieces and maybe get a little bit closer to points scoring positions. And as they are actually now top of the back markers, with Williams and Sauber each trailing with 0 points below them, you would think the pit wall would be screaming at both the drivers to not race each other and not collide, because I think that there might be something afoot here. And it does make me wonder, perhaps does one of the drivers at Alpine already know that he is not going to be there next year? Maybe Pierre Gasly. And because of this, is he now kind of taking matters into his own hands and perhaps maybe not yielding to Ocon perhaps? Because fighting so closely in the opening stage of the race like that is not helpful, and in fact you're both taking a heap of time off each other. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'm kind of expecting a driver announcement sometime soon from Alpine, but yeah, congrats on your first point. Watch this space in terms of driver lineup, I think. And now we get on to Williams. Now, to be honest, I was going to do a Williams video a little while back and talking about how the season hasn't gone according to plan, but I thought, no, you know what, they'll pull it together, they'll get some points on the board, and things will get back up and running and back to as it should be in reflection to last year. But after Miami, I have to admit that it is looking concerning now, as Williams are now the only team, aside from Sauber, to not score a point. And in contrast to last season, where Williams had a car that could drive very fast in a straight line, which got them out of some jams, it appears that they've tried to build the more traditional jack-of-all-trades car this year, but this just isn't working for them. And something else that isn't helping is it seems that Albon has lost some of his fizz in comparison to last year, I think. I'm not sure what to call it apart from fizz, but he doesn't look like the kind of happy-go-lucky guy that he was back in 2023. And for Logan Sargent, yeah, okay, he was punted off the track in Miami, but he was more or less running in his traditional position, which is last, or more or less last. Drastic changes are needed at Williams, and I would say that it's going to come in the form of switching out Sargent for somebody else. But then imagine if this potential other driver makes his debut and beats Logan Sargent straight out of the box, and also gives Alex Albon a run for his money straight from the off. Now that would be a very intriguing situation that Williams would find themselves in. So Williams have to get themselves together fast. Because Sauber, although they are a bit of a shambles at the moment, over the course of this season and next, that Audi Vorsprung Duck technique and a little bit of money as well is going to be drip fed into the team, which could help them climb out of that 10th position. So I sense perhaps that some tough decisions will have to be made sooner, because I think at this stage they are going to have to be made inevitably. Now I must say, aside from the action on track, I really thought that given that this was the first American race since Las Vegas last year, the Miami Grand Prix PR department would cook up an absolute cringe fest. Because, you know, in previous years we've seen these kind of WWE style driver entrances, celebrities being the centre of attention, although they don't really know what Formula 1 is, and every single other dial just turned up to 11, and overall it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And also combining all this sort of stuff with the lack of action on track, it makes a lot of us wonder, is the Miami Grand Prix actually needed? But for this race, this season, I think that some lessons have been learned, and I think more or less they've kind of found a balance with how to kind of sell the Miami Grand Prix, given that the action on track is acceptable. Now, I've always thought the Miami Grand Prix is kind of dressed up a bit too much over-reliance on that kind of Miami Vice, Grand Theft Auto Vice City branding, and it more or less kind of appeals to the sort of person who wants to let the world know that they're at a Formula 1 race, rather than to just be at a Formula 1 race and just absorb what is actually happening. Yeah, influencers, basically. And even the Donald made an appearance at McLaren for some reason. But this year, they seem to have got rid of a lot of the dead weight in the chaff and focused a bit more on the event. And even Martin Brundle's grid walk was so much of an improvement compared to last season's. People knew who he actually was, and people seemed a bit more kind of gracious to be there. People who knew what F1 actually was, and they could actually string a sentence together, so it was great. So was the Miami Grand Prix better than previous seasons? Yes, it was. Does it deserve a place on the F1 calendar? No, it does not. So yes, it's flashy and excessive and cheesy, but when you're denying Grand Prix at excellent circuits in countries like Germany, Malaysia, Turkey and South Africa to give Miami a slot, it just doesn't seem worth it. Circuit of the Americas in Texas is a great location, and Vegas will be interesting to see a second time around now that they've ironed out some of the creases, but Miami, I think if that disappeared from the calendar, I don't think a lot of us would miss it. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you thought of the Miami Grand Prix. Give that subscribe button there a little click. I'll see you again soon. Cheers.